Do you like counting in increments of 2? Because it's time to talk about the dark horse for this format, Barrow. A great combo deck that has a pretty good matchup into the set 2 meta in my opinion. My build is made to do one thing, get 15 in soul as fast as possible, which in most cases should be by the first grade 3 turn. Now let's get into Barrow's strengths. Barrow's strengths are that it's consistent to 15 in soul by the first grade 3 turn, that it wipes out the board after 15 in soul every turn, and that it has essentially 5 attacks every turn after 15 in soul. And then lastly, it can be very aggressive out the gate with the grade 2s. Now some of Barrow's key weaknesses are that it can't reliably guard early due to the need to keep / resolve combo pieces, that it's a very single-minded deck, and that it does not vary in play much after 15 in soul turn, because all you do is swing rear, swing van, call the 2 Sonikers, and then swing 2 Sonikers. And that play never changes after you hit 15 in soul on grade 3 turn. And then low hand count due to cards being used to hit 15 in soul. Here's my deck list. As stated before, the goal was always simple. We need to see if we can count together with Barrow all the way to the magic number 15 and use his overpowered skill to win the game in the following turns. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. There's no way that a Barrow deck can consistently hit 15 soon enough. It'll take multiple grade 3 turns, and I'll just lose before I can ever get there. This deck is just too slow and inconsistent. But this is just what the Vanguard community and all those Bruce and Bastion playing sheep want you to think. In reality, Barrow is a consistent powerhouse of a deck that should be hitting 15 in soul by the first grade 3 turn and start applying pressure right out the gate, which is exactly what I designed this deck to do. Now let's get into the specifics. If you made it this far, I assume you know what Barrow does. But do you know about the unarguably best card in the deck? It is, without a debate, Supernatural Extraction. Now let me explain. While yes, it does have a very high cost of Counterblast 1, discard 1, but it also soul charges 3 and adds 1 back to your hand from soul. This is important because it goes 2 soul positive, which is the most the deck can do at one time, and it lets you grab something out from soul, potentially another soul charger, for example Curtis, to soul charge 2 more, making this one card a soul charge 4. Engraver is another great option because it allows her to attack, and even if she doesn't hit, jump into soul and countercharge 1, going +1 in soul, and letting you play Extraction and Barrow skill all on the same turn with 1 counterblast. Or if you don't need any more soul, grab a Perfect Guard or an Unfortunate Overtrigger soul charge. The point is that this card fixes every single problem set 1 Barrow had, and it helps with consistency and defense and soul charge all in one card. There's quite literally nothing else we could have asked for in a set 2 card. As to the only other set 2 card we play, Crimson Igspeller, this card is kind of meant to be dropped on grade 2 turn as an early aggression play in an attempt to soul charge 2 off of it twice, once being on the grade 2 turn and the second being on the grade 3 turn, because it soul charges once off of each attack. Besides that, this card's soul effect hardly ever comes up, and most of the time I don't want to use it due to a fear of decking out. Also, the Vanguard already applies a lot of pressure and gets PG'd most of the time due to it gaining 10k off of a crit naturally once we hit 15 in soul. The last cards I'd like to touch on are Brother Soul and Electro Spartans. These cards should both be used on grade 1 or grade 2 turn, respectively. Basically as fast and as soon as you see them, because on grade 3 turn you'd rather be using the grade 3 order, so you want to be using the 1 order per turn on grade 1 and 2 turn on a Brother Soul. And Electro Spartan should be trying to soul charge 2 and swing once on grade 2 turn, then intercepting and getting off the board to make room for more units next turn, because more often than not, we're going to be dropping a lot of units to hit 15 on soul on the first grade 3 turn. Now let's talk about the ratios and why you should be playing Barrow like this. First off, I max out on every card that soul charges 2 or has the potential to soul charge 2, except for Brother Soul. This is because you want to be using the other order more often instead, and 8 orders in deck got really clunky. So I replaced one of the Brother Soul with one copy of Soniker, because it's nice to see but not necessary to win the game. Now on to the triggers. I play 5 crit and 6 fronts. Kind of an even split, but I go back and forward on the one more crit or one more front. I believe both are invaluable to the deck and should be ran, though, because they're both super useful on a 15 and soul turn. Now as to why you should be playing Barrow. First off, it's cheap. Don't ask me why, it just is. And second off, it has an incredible matchup spread. What does Bruce or Bastion do pre-grade 3 turn? Exactly nothing. Thus, they give you ample time to hit 15 in soul, which should be happening out the gate, and then ending the game before they can, due to them needing 2 to 3 grade 3 turns. And we'll also be ruining their board every chance we get, due to it all being shoved into soul. Well, then what about aggressive decks like Magnolia? Well, we put their entire board into their soul on the first grade 3 turn, the deck loses a lot, if not all of its steam. It doesn't even have the option to call back any of the units shoved into soul off of Wild Intelligence, which is another added bonus. Then, what other decks are we scared of? Overdress units go into the soul, Trickstar and all, so not them. And as for Overlord, we don't really care about other rear guards, so that's not really an issue either. And then Eugene, PBD, and Hexorb are all a joke. Prison helps us hit 15 in soul by letting us use on-play skills more than once, so not them either. Then all that really leaves is Zorga and Orphist. 2 decks that I've purposefully done extensive playtesting with. And let me tell you what, the Orphist matchup is a really even game, that you're going to try and be counterblast denying them, and it'll be a longer, slower game than most Barrow games. But Zorga is probably our worst matchup in the game, due to them being able to usually live 2 Barrow turns if they go first, and sometimes even being able to push us to deck out. But that's kind of out the window if you go first and are able to hit 13 on the first grade 3 turn. That puts any game in your favor. Long story short, this is a cheap and competitive deck that has a good matchup with most decks and everything in the meta. So what's the downside, I hear you asking? Well, I'll tell you what it is. While you will succeed and win games in tournament, often against these so-called meta decks, no one will play you in casuals, because no matter what deck they have, they'll say it's a bad matchup in a Barrow. They'll complain and say things like, I'll play as long as you're not playing Barrow, or, no, not Barrow, you'll hit 15 and it'll just ruin the game. You must sacrifice the casual games for the power of Barrow. If after hearing all this you're still unsure, check out some of my games with this deck linked in the description below. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.